It's incredibly hard to look ahead and to try to interpret what the future will be. In a world where the famous term VUCA, volatile and uncertain and complex and ambiguous. That is the type of world in which we live. Imagine you're an oil company and you were a year ago versus now. With the oil price, what is it right now, 40 the barrel, and a year ago it was over 100 or whatever it was. The world has changed dramatically, and it's just the oil price, then everything else on top of that. So in a world where everything is changing, this is very hard to do. It really is. And that means, therefore, that you can not only do that with your small strategy department trying to understand everything. That's nonsense. It's complete nonsense. You need to invite the world in. That's what you need to do. You need to create diversity of sources. You need to talk to people. You need to talk to academics. You need to talk to people that are perhaps a bit geeky. You need to invite the most diverse sources of thoughts that you can imagine. Regularly look far ahead. Try to understand trends. Don't only look at the four walls of your company, but look at the entire ecosystem of your company. So this is very hard to do. It's very easy to say this, but to turn it into a process that generates results and trends so you can truly understand it is very, very hard to do. Is it possible? Yes, it is. Is it exact? No, it's not, because you're talking about the future. It's often scenarios you're talking about, right? As opposed to exact numbers. It's trying to understand it. But it's absolutely the first and the most important principle. So selecting the appropriate levels of inspiration, that's what the game is here, if you want to do this well. That involves, like I said, the right people that you need to bring in, and also the right scope, understanding the scope. Don't go too narrow. Go very wide in the beginning and try to narrow it down much later on. The first companies actually that started to do this, again to put it a bit in historical perspective, was Shell after 1973, after the oil crisis. It was Shell that started to work with scenario planning. So they said, in a world where we cannot predict the oil price, and it has such a big impact on our company, how do we do that? We need to look ahead. And by the way, the oil industry makes investment decisions for 15 years or often longer, right? So it's very hard to do. So they were the first one that started with scenario planning. Then in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, it dropped. And then what you see in the last 10 years, scenario planning really has gone up. We get more and more questions from companies to do it for them. It's quite amazing. That's one of the techniques to do this. So don't predict the future, but develop scenarios that are often a bit vague and need to be worked through.